Number 9. Jennifer Denyu. A 34-year-old former New York State trooper named Jennifer Denyu found herself in embarrassingly hot water last year when she became entangled in a catfishing scandal that made news headlines and ended her career. Things looked promising for the woman when she graduated from her law enforcement training in 2016 and drove right into her new line of work. But she veered down a wayward path in 2018 when she posed as a man online and began an online relationship with a 33-year-old woman living on Long Island. They corresponded for 3 months, during which time the victim sent nude photos of herself to Denyu. The ex-cop threatened to post the nudes online if the woman didn't travel to New York City to buy a fake ID for her. An investigation led to Denyu's arrest for this and other similar incidents. She was also charged in Rome, New York for using various false identities to harass another woman for more than 15 years after they graduated from the same high school. The case out of Rome was ultimately dismissed and sealed, but the charges stemming out of Long Island stuck. Denyu resigned from her job earlier this year, and she was sentenced to 3 years of probation. Number 8. Susanna Birch. By the time she was 27, Susanna Birch had spent 12 years in a relationship with someone she never met in person. She met the man she knew as Richard in a chat room when she was just 15 years old. He claimed that he was 17 and that he lived in another part of the state, roughly 8 hours away from Susanna. The two hit it off pretty quickly based on their shared interests and spent hours at a time talking. But there were things about Richard that didn't add up. His promises to meet up with his online girlfriend never came to fruition, and he never video chatted with Susanna. He told her that his parents were overprotective, and for a number of years, it was a believable excuse. The couple continued their long-distance romance and even got engaged after Susanna turned 18. 9 more years of breaking up, getting back together, and frequent arguments went by before the young woman saw the TV show Catfish and decided that she deserved some long-awaited answers about the man she's been involved with for nearly half her life. Truth be told, Susanna had suspected for years that Richard wasn't being completely honest with her, and she was finally ready to face the issue head-on. She sought the help of a service that specialized in identifying catfishes and detailed the experience in an article she wrote for SBS News. The hired investigators quickly connected Richard's information to a Facebook account belonging to a married 60-year-old named Patrick. The next time he called, Susanna confronted him. At first, Patrick denied the catfishing, but he apparently realized that he was in a hole too deep to dig himself out of with more excuses, and simply told Susanna, in his own words, that it just grew and grew out of control. He then unloaded about his drinking and marital problems, which had the effect of turning the tables and making Susanna feel guilty. Realizing she was being manipulated once again, she said goodbye to Patrick one final time, hung up the phone, and moved on with her life. Number 7. Keegan Anthony Klein. In a pair of tragedies that became known as the Delphi murders, the lifeless bodies of teenagers Abigail Williams and Liberty German were found in Delphi, Indiana in 2017. The girls' remains were discovered along the same hiking trail they had vanished from the day before. Police have not released details of how the teens were killed, and there have been no arrests in the baffling case. For quite some time, detectives failed to identify a suspect or even a person of interest. Their investigation eventually led them to a 27-year-old man from Peru, Indiana, named Keegan Anthony Klein. He had created a fake Instagram profile under the username Anthony Shots, using photos of a fit young male model. The social media user was the last person to have any contact with the girls before they were murdered. By the time police began to suspect Klein in the case, he was already awaiting trial for 30 other alleged crimes relating to child pornography and soliciting minors for sex. He admitted to using the Anthony Shots profile to solicit sexually explicit photos of young girls, but he adamantly denied being the Delphi killer. Unfortunately for now, the murderer remains at large, but the findings seem promising and offer new hope to a case that has otherwise hit a discouraging standstill. Number 6. Mariah Johnson. Mariah Johnson grew up going back and forth between Washington State and Colorado. After high school, she joined the U.S. Air Force and got an astrophysics degree. She spent several years at an Air Force base in Colorado before ending up in Alamogordo, New Mexico, where she's currently stationed. Things took an unexpected turn for Johnson when her Instagram account was hacked during her late teens. Catfishers began using her photos and identity to scam unsuspecting love interests out of thousands of dollars over the internet. She believes that her uniform made her especially susceptible to the widespread fraud because people tend to hold military members in high regard. Myra told the Las Cruces Sun News that the impersonation has put her in the craziest situations. She said that people have messaged her accusing her of stealing their money. Based on what the victims have told Johnson, the scammers pretending to be her say that she's currently deployed and needs money. Myra noticed that social media users over a certain age seem more vulnerable to these scams because they don't realize that every account they come across is real. She's been dealing with this for years now, and while the use of her photos was admittedly slightly flattering at first, it caused more problems for the soldier than anything. For example, when she arrived at her current base, her supervisor told her that he couldn't figure out which of the 20 Facebook accounts that appeared in a search using her name and photos belonged to her. Things got even more suspicious when a scammer pretending to be Johnson included a link to an adult website in the fake profile. But to Myra's surprise, authorities were unable to do anything about it. They told her that she has no options for legal recourse, and that her best bet was to make people aware that people were impersonating her online. She tried filing complaints on social media websites, but her concerns eventually fell on deaf ears, and nothing was done about the fake profiles. So for now, she continues to deal with it. As a rising influencer with more than 13,000 followers, it's probably safe to assume that it's becoming easier to get the word out. Number 5. Renee Marsden. Teresa and Mark Martin's lives were forever changed by tragedy in 2013 when they received a text message from their 20-year-old daughter, Renee, saying that she loved her parents and apologizing for what she was about to do. Just hours later, the young woman, who worked in Sydney, Australia as a hairdresser, took her own life. Less than 2 years earlier, she had started communicating online with a man named Braden, whom she was introduced to by her best friend. The two exchanged tens of thousands of text messages, and Renee grew to believe that Braden was her future husband. Just months after they began talking, Braden said that he was going to jail on a manslaughter charge after getting into an accident that killed one of his friends. Renee vowed to stand by her man, and they even looked into whether they could travel internationally for their honeymoon with Braden's criminal record. But he abruptly ended the relationship one day in 2013, leaving Renee so heartbroken that she committed suicide. It soon came to light that she was never communicating with the real person in the first place, but that her best friend, Camila, the one who introduced the pair, had catfished her for 18 months straight. Before the truth was exposed, Camila had attended the memorials in Renee's honor and stood alongside the deceased young woman's grieving family, playing up the role of a mourning best friend. Renee's family later recalled that Camila was bizarrely obsessed with Renee and seemed to have developed a romantic interest in her at some point. They believed that Camila created the fake Braden identity when she realized that Renee did not feel the same way. While Camila's actions were reprehensible, they technically weren't against the law, and she never faced criminal charges. The tragedy has prompted campaigns for catfishing to be made illegal in Australia, so that in the future, perpetrators of this potentially deadly deception can be brought to justice. Number 4. Tori Marshall. Writing for the Australian website Mamma Mia, Tori Marshall explained that she first created a Tinder account when she was 23 because the dating pool in her small town was, in her words, non-existent. She met a man named Stelios through the app in 2019 and immediately found him attractive. More importantly, she felt a strong emotional connection with him, unlike anything she'd ever experienced before. After chatting on Tinder for a while, the pair decided to move the conversation to more private platforms. Something didn't seem right when Stelios added Tori on Facebook Messenger, but she was unable to friend request him. She brought it up, and he said that he's been banned from using Facebook despite remaining active on Messenger. At the time, the excuse seemed plausible. It was only in hindsight that Tori would realize it was the first of many red flags that would follow. She nevertheless trusted Stelios fully and told him everything about her life, even after he started doing some things that made her uncomfortable, including asking her for intimate photos. His manipulation and charm were convincing enough to cause Tori to overlook these behaviors. Finally, they made plans to actually meet in person. Tori took time off work so that Stelios could spend a week at her house. When the day came, though, he messaged her and said that he was in town, but he wasn't going to meet up with her until she did what he asked. He was trying to get the young woman to send an explicit video for himself. Eager to finally meet, Tori reluctantly obliged. But as soon as she sent the video, Stelios dropped off the radar. He never showed up or spoke to her ever again. leaving her to wonder who she had sent such personal and private content to. In her own words, Tori was left feeling disgusting, manipulated, and confused. Police looked into the matter and told her that Stelios wasn't a real person, but that the only way they could take legal action was if he shared her explicit video online. Thankfully, that hasn't happened, and hopefully, it never will. Number 3. Andrew Wolf and Cray Strange. Andrew Wolf was an award-winning math teacher who was well-liked amongst his students at the private Springdale Chestnut Hill Academy in Philadelphia. But there may have been ulterior motives behind his friendliness, as locals learned last year when he was arrested for a catfishing scheme that involved enticing middle and high school-aged kids to send explicit photos and videos. Wolf is accused of co-conspiring with a 19-year-old man from Carthage, New York, named Cray Strange, to carry out the sinister plot. Throughout 2020 and 2021, the pair allegedly persuaded young boys to produce lewd content by posing as teenage girls. According to federal prosecutors, Wolf gave one 13-year-old a $100 PlayStation gift card in exchange for explicit footage of himself. The school's head, Stephen Drugan, described the news as difficult and disturbing, and reassured parents that the school had fully cooperated with law enforcement throughout the investigation. But he spoke too soon when he said that none of the hundreds of explicit images and videos found on Wolf's device were of children who attended the academy. As it turned out, some of the school students were, in fact, victimized as part of the sickening scheme. Wolf and Strange faced a mandatory minimum sentence of at least 5 years if found guilty. Number 2. Taunting teenagers. A group of unnamed teenagers from Melbourne, Australia recently made headlines for allegedly using fake online dating accounts to lure and attack unsuspecting gay men who were looking for companionship. The repeated violence sparked a police investigation that led them to the youths, who are accused of persuading their victims to meet at a park. 2 of the targeted men suffered minor injuries, and a third was left physically uninjured but endured homophobic verbal abuse. Police arrested 5 boys ages ranging 15 to 16 and a 19-year-old man in connection with the assaults. The suspects are all due back in court at a later date. A law enforcement spokesman made it clear that the department will not tolerate hate-motivated crimes and promised to continue acting swiftly in response to complaints about these types of things happening. And number 1, Ezra Mayhew. 17-year-old Ezra Mayhew hasn't been seen or heard from since October 15th of last year, when he was dropped off at his job in Silverton, Oregon. When his parents arrived to pick him up at the end of his shift, he was nowhere to be found. Authorities theorized that the teen had run away and tracked his movement from Silverton to Salem, then to Seattle, where Ezra's tale went cold. Investigators and family members suspect that he fell victim to a catfishing scam that may have landed him in serious danger, but they have no way of knowing for sure. For now, the young man's disappearance remains a mystery. Detectives hope that anyone who may have information about his whereabouts come forward to assist in the ongoing investigation, which has left the Mayhew family feeling distraught and heartbroken. Thanks for watching. Would you rather be tricked into meeting up with someone who used fake photos in their dating profile, or have your own photos stolen and used in a fake profile? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe. See you next time.